You have only three resources in business: time, money, and people. Great businesses have consistently high-performing people, and that is no accident. And we're looking for one type of person in particular, and we like to call them A players. A players own it, solve it, do it. Or to put it on a bumper sticker, they get shit done. Great businesses have A players. Poor businesses don't. A players will get you great results. Lousy players will get you lousy results. Success, it turns out, is highly dependent on who you hire and who you do not fire. Do not tolerate mediocrity. Poor players bring down your average performance, and A players will leave a low-performing environment. So, exactly how do we define A players? We define A players as being in the top 10% of talent. But to be more specific, they're in the top 10% of talent that is available at a specific salary. And that's an important distinction, because often people make the mistake that perhaps A players are just the super high earners, or that perhaps we're only talking about the potential future superstars. But no, everybody in your business can and should be an A player and be proud of it. Now that presents you with two challenges. The first one is quite obvious. When you're hiring, when you're adding new people to your team, you need to draw a line in the sand when you walk out of here today. Yes, you must now hire A player talent always. That is non-negotiable. I mean, to be able to do that, you have to be able to clearly know what the top 10% looks like. But there is a second, less obvious challenge, and that is when promoting people. Because when you promote somebody, when you pay them more, or when you add responsibilities to their job, you have to repeatedly, continuously evaluate to ensure that that individual is still in the top 10%. Because an A player at this salary is not necessarily an A player at a higher salary, or when you promote them, such as when you promote somebody into management. And we see this all the time. You start with an A player, and they get promoted to a level at which they are no longer competent, because to be an A player, they must always be in the top 10% of talent for that job, for the salary that is available. And the failure rate for promotion is identical to the failure rate for hiring. It is an eye-watering 75%. That's right. 3 out of every 4 hires and promotions fail to produce A players, and the cost to your business is truly unbearable. Now, some of those mishires, the really lousy ones, I'm sure you show them the door. But the B players, many of those people, including that guy you promoted into management, some of them you keep at your own risk. So how else do we define A players? A players should have no fatal flaws. And there are a number of competencies that we look for in A players. A players, they contribute more, they innovate more, they work smarter, they earn more trust, they display more resourcefulness, they take more initiative, they demonstrate greater teamwork, they develop better business strategies, they articulate your vision more passionately, they implement change more effectively, and to boot, A players attract A players. If you've got one, get him to go into his address book on his phone, because it's full of people just like her. A players produce higher quality work, they prevent more problems, and they get the work done in less time and at less cost. This is what I mean by get shit done. Those that create great companies understand that the ultimate throttle on growth is not markets, it's not products, it's not technology, it's not competition. The ultimate throttle on growth is the ability to attract and retain A players, to attract the highest level of talent, and to have that talent density at an absolute minimum of 90% in your business. And to be able to do that, you are going to have to be able to filter and select candidates based on these competencies and many more. These competencies are just table stakes that are common to A players, but for every specific role, you will have to identify the key competencies, half a dozen perhaps, related to that job, and if it's management, there will be more competencies on top. But I can give you a tip to get you started, because there is one competency here that is really common among A players of all levels. It's like a beacon that identifies A players, that gives you a really strong clue, and that competency is resourcefulness. Resourcefulness is many things wrapped into one. Resourcefulness is energy, it's analytic skills, it's passion, it's persistence, it's perseverance, and A players all exude resourcefulness. When you challenge an A player with an opportunity, or they meet some seemingly hopeless setback, you can see their brain is working 24/7, figuring out how to go over, around, or through the barriers to success, trying to figure out day and night how to snatch success from the jaws of defeat. And when you interview A players, when you meet and you speak with them, and you talk about their past work, they all describe how they accomplish things using resourcefulness. But A players alone do not make an A team. Excellence results from high-functioning teams in which each individual is supported to do his or her best and that have a high degree of accountability. And the biggest complaint of leaders everywhere today is a lack of accountability. A staggering 90% of business leaders report trying but failing to hold others accountable for business results. And employees, a similar proportion, report actively avoiding accountability altogether. We have an accountability problem, and it's everywhere. And without accountability, engagement falls, leaders lose credibility, and A players leave. The reason we have such a widespread accountability problem is because leaders are failing to create a sufficient level of clarity in their business. You can only be as effective in your business as the level of clarity. 85% of managers don't clearly define for their teams what they should be working on. And I do mean clearly define, not generalizations. Generalizations don't cut it. Generalizations kill clarity. And lack of clarity is the enemy of accountability. Now, there are 4 things required for accountability to work, 4 levels of accountability. And the first level is what? You have to be clear about what it is you're going to do, of course. You have to prioritize what it is that you are going to focus on. And some of you are going to be very disappointed when you look in the dictionary at the word prioritize and it does not say do 10 things. Yes, your team are working on lots of things, but do they know what the most important thing is? You have to create that clarity for them. The second requirement, the second level of clarity is where. It's not good enough to say, we're going to do this thing. You have to be specific about the clear outcomes. What does success look like? What does it look like when we win? What does it look like when we cross the finish line? If you are going to run a 4-minute mile, then guess what? You have to be clear that when you cross the finish line and you look over at the clock, it says 3 minutes 59. And yes, that is exactly what Roger Bannister did in 1954. When he broke the 4-minute mile and he crossed the finish line, looks at the clock, it's 3:59 and 4/10. The third thing required for clarity is that you have to measure performance, and you have to do this regularly. And today, that usually means in real time. But the critical thing about measurement is that if you get the measurements right, if you work them backwards from the outcome, the measurements become drivers for performance. They're not just measures to fill up some dashboard or satisfy some boss. The measures become the drivers themselves. And the fourth requirement for accountability to work is that you have to review the performance, not just at the end. You have to review regularly so that you can change course, so that you can iterate, so that you can course correct, so that your team is constantly learning, because at the end of the day, you need to hit your goal smack in the bullseye. And if any one of those 4 breaks down, then accountability breaks down altogether. But to really kickstart accountability, what you ideally need to have is for everybody in your team to be holding one another accountable. And the best way to do that is to create the clarity and to hire A players. Otherwise, it's going to be you trying to hold every individual in that team accountable. And if they're not A players or any clarity is lacking, you will meet strong resistance. That's why we have an accountability problem. This is going to be your focus today. A players and accountability. Because together, they get shit done.